Hi, grade sixes. So now we're going to do a couple problems dealing with remainders and how in earlier years it was okay to write things like remainder 3 or write your remainder as a fraction if you were dividing over 4. But we don't want to do that moving into higher grades because we need to be able to do something with those numbers, and it's not easy to do something when we have an R3 or a fraction. So for example, we'll just do a simple 3-digit division question. 142 divided by 4. So we know that 4 does not go into 1, so we look at the number 14. 4 goes into 14 3 times, because 3 times 4 is 12. That gives us a leftover of 2. We bring this 2 down. We get 22. 4 goes into 22. We know that 4 times 5 is 20, which is as close as we can get to 22. We subtract that. And normally we would have an answer of 35 remainder 2. Or if you have been taught before, you could do 35 and 2/4 or 1/2 as your remainder, a fraction remainder. But we want to use remainders as, we want to show our remainders as decimals in grade 6. So what we need to do is we look, and the end of that whole number, the whole number was 142, we need to go into the decimal numbers, into the tenths, into the hundredths possibly. So we know that at the end of the whole number, a decimal happens. And then we go, after the decimal, after the decimal point, we go into the numbers that are below 1 whole. So whole numbers on this side, decimal numbers on this side. So we put the decimal at the end of the whole number. We put the decimal again, same spot above in our answer, and we keep going. We know that we're going to hold this tenths spot by adding a 0. We're going to show this tenth spot by saying there's actually a 0 here. It would be no different as if we wrote 2 zeros, and we know that $142 is 142 whole dollars and 0 cents. That is what it's essentially showing. We haven't changed the value of 142. We're just showing that there are zero decimal numbers after the whole number. But we want to show these zeros, and we're just going to take the next step as if we've turned this 3-digit number into a 5-digit number. We're going to bring that 0 down next to that 2 remainder that we had, and we're going to create 20. So 4 goes into 20 5 times, just like we did already. And 5 times 4 is 20, and you end up with 0. So we actually didn't need this second 0, but I just wanted to show how it looks like dollars. And so we actually didn't need it, but not a big deal. So once you get to 0 at the bottom, that is as far as you can go. What you want to do in order to get rid of your remainders is you want to keep adding zeros this way until you get to 0 at the bottom. I saw one math video where when you got to 0 at the bottom, they made a happy face because they were happy that they were finally done. So the 142 divided by 4 is 35 and 5/10, 35 and a half. 5/10 written like this, 5/10 is equal to 1/2. And so when you see a decimal 5, that can also be spoken about as a half. So 35.5. All right, one more decimal problem I want to do with you guys. Now this is when we have a number, a 3-digit number that already has a decimal point in the dividend. This is the dividend. Okay, so we have 12 4/10 divided by 5. And if you remember from the last video and from the last example, if you have a decimal down here, you always have to just make sure that you are showing the decimal in the same place above. So here our decimal is between our whole numbers and our tenths place. And so you need to make sure you're showing it above. So here 5 does not go into 1, but 5 goes into 12. 5 goes into 12 2 times, because 2 times 5 is 10. We're going to subtract that. We end up with 2. We bring this 4 down. We don't need to bring the decimal down because we're only concerned with the decimal being in the right spot for the answer. So 5 goes into 24 4 times because we can't quite get, it's not quite 25, so we have to use 20. That's as close as we can get. We're now at 4. Well, we've used the last digit here. So if you remember from the last example, we're already into the decimal places. So we would just go, okay, we have 4/10, but we have 0 hundredths. And we have 0 thousandths. And we can keep adding zeros in the decimal places as we need them to get rid of this remainder. We don't want to say our answer is 2 4/10 remainder 4 because we want to move on to the next step as mathematicians and change these remainders into the decimal numbers. So if we add that 0 in the hundredth spot, we would just do the same step as always, bring it down, and now we have 40. 5 goes into 40, nice and evenly, 8 times. 8 times 5 is 40. And you end up with that 0, which means that we are done. So your answer of 12 4/10 divided by 5 is 2 48 hundredths. Now, if this didn't divide evenly, you would just keep adding zeros going this way until you got to that happy face 0 at the bottom. But we got to that 0 at the bottom, so we can stop, and that is our answer. Hopefully this has helped, showing you that when we have decimals, it's not that scary to move the decimal up and just keep adding decimals to get rid of that remainder.